All right, guys. Thumbs up. Make sure you put a thumbs up right now. And this is what you guys have been waiting for because the music is off. This is where we schmooze with Brad.
Here we go. And I don't know if you saw the bombshell going on in Washington, D.C. Sondland, who was the ambassador to the United Nations, who was one of the 3 or 4 key people who were organizing the quid pro quo between the United States, Donald Trump, the president, and Viktor Zelensky, who is the president of Ukraine, that Zelensky should start an investigation into Burisma, which is a company that Biden's son was on the board of directors, because they believe that if there was an investigation that would at least even be announced, the conservative media can take off with all sorts of conspiracy theories that the Bidens are crooked, and that's why you should vote for Donald Trump in the election for 2020, similar to what he did with Hillary Clinton and the email server that made her very, very crooked. And it's already been debunked by the CIA, the National Security Council, the FBI, Department of Homeland Security, the State Department, and every other law enforcement agency in the United States that the Bidens did absolutely nothing wrong or illegal. Despite that fact, Donald Trump has been saying they have, and Gordon Sondland, who's the ambassador to the United Nations, he was trying to get aid to the Ukrainians, military aid that has already been authorized by Congress. With that being said, Viktor Sondland, who is the ambassador to the United Nations, says that there was 2 different types of foreign policy going on. There was a regular foreign policy channel, and then there was an irregular foreign policy channel run by Rudolph Giuliani. According to the testimony of Sondland, Donald Trump didn't care about the regular channels. He really didn't care about Ukraine. He didn't care if Russia took over Ukraine. He was concerned about one particular corrupt act that has been debunked, which is that the Bidens were making billions off of something involving Burisma and an oil company in which the son was a board member. And somehow that involved also the theft of emails from the Democratic National Committee. And it was the Ukrainians, not the Russians, who sabotaged the U.S. election. None of that is true. Nobody believes it is true other than 2 people in the entire world, who is Rudy Giuliani and Donald Trump. As a matter of fact, all the people who are in power right now in the Ukraine were not in power in 2016. You know what they were doing in 2016? They were making television shows, because the president of Ukraine is a comedian. And yes, and everybody who is in the Ukrainian government is former television star.
What?
Yes. So they weren't even part of this. In Latin times, they called this quid pro quo. Something for something. In present day time, they call this bribery, because it was not furthering any U.S. government interest. It was actually not furthering the U.S. government interest. It was not furthering the U.S. taxpayer or the United States citizen. It was only furthering the interest of Donald Trump to try to get reelected again by having a foreign power come out and say that the Bidens were crooked. So now, up to this point, all the Republicans were saying, well, we haven't heard anybody who said that Trump said to do this. Well, we heard it today. Sondland testified there was a quid pro quo as it relates to the requested White House call and the White House meeting. He also testified he worked with Rudy Giuliani to pressure Ukraine at the express direction of the President of the United States. Sondland explicitly tied Trump, Vice President Mike Pence, and Secretary of State Mike Pompeo to the campaign to put pressure on the Ukraine to investigate the Bidens in return for military aid that has already been authorized by Congress and a visit to the White House.
Was there a quid pro quo? As I testified previously, with regard to the requested White House call and the White House meeting, the answer is yes.
He said everybody was in the loop. I'm quoting him. It was no secret.
Secretary Perry, Ambassador Volker, and I worked with Mr. Rudy Giuliani on Ukraine matters at the express direction of the President of the United States.
He was testifying, unlike Bolton, unlike Rick Perry, unlike Pompeo, unlike others who refused to come testify, because he respects the gravity of the moment. We're going to have testimony from Tim Holmes, and Sondland has agreed with Holmes that there was a telephone call from a restaurant in Kyiv that he was in a restaurant in Kyiv with this emissary from the U.S. Embassy. And he said to Trump, yes, the Ukrainian president loves your ass. And he said because that's the way that he and Trump talk to each other. They like to curse. Sondland said, that sounds like something I would say. That's how President Trump and I communicate. A lot of four-letter words in this case. Now, meanwhile, at the White House, Donald Trump, who claims he doesn't watch TV, but we know that's all he does all day, he reacted. He says, at Real Donald Trump on Twitter, because that's how he talks to the world, impeachment witch hunt is now over. Ambassador Sondland asked U.S. President, what do you want from Ukraine? And I keep hearing all these different ideas and theories. What do you want? Now, what Sondland was saying was that after it was determined that Trump was not meeting with Zelensky until he gave this public announcement of an investigation into Biden, into Burisma. He is not going to give aid until this public announcement. And the Ukrainians were saying, we need the money. Sondland called up Trump on the phone and he said, what do you want me to tell them to do?
Right.
Just because he says that doesn't mean he's clear. Now, what happened is that Trump realized that people are starting to question why he's doing this, which is why he covered himself up. And he said, just tell him to do the right thing. Now, with that being said, the Republicans say, well, Trump gave the aid eventually. It was released on September 12th or September 11th, sometime in early September.
Right.
He gave the aid. So there's no crime. Trump gave the aid 3 days after Congress started investigating all of this. Come on. Come on, right?
He knew they was on to him.
Meanwhile, the Republicans have nothing to say about all of this. Devin Nunes, who was the top Republican leading the, I guess, the cross-examination of these witnesses. He's just making all sorts of controversial statements to kind of muddy the waters. Nobody really can defend Trump on any of this. It is in the Constitution. You get impeached for bribery. So to say it's not impeachable.
It definitely is.
It definitely is. Why is Nunes doing this? Because he cares about one person, Donald Trump. Donald Trump says that Ukrainians interfered and it's Burisma and it's Biden and they're corrupt, but he doesn't really make much sense. So that's what's going on. We got to get into something we like to call hump day news, right? Oh. Let those camels out. And then we got to get into our immigration questions. Here's the camels.
Yeah.
Here are the camels. This is kind of gross for those concerned that their man may cheat on them. A woman now has more drastic measures that she can go to. It's called a chastity cage. Unlike a chastity belt. So apparently what you do is you strap it in and she locks it up. And the only thing you can do is urinate through it. And
look at the small one.
The small one. This chastity cage just came on the market. What do you think, Jonathan? Would you ever?
Absolutely not.
If you don't want to wear the metal, you can wear the plastic one. My question is this. What if you get excited while you're wearing that? Wouldn't that hurt?
Well, it looked like the at least the metal one. It looked like it was a spring, so like it'll.
I think
extend.
that. By the way, I think that's gonna like cut you. It would be bleeding from that thing, right? Some people like to say, you know, Uncle Brad, you got balls of steel. Well, if I'm wearing those, I think they'd be right. What do you think?
I feel like there's a lot of crazy baby mothers out there in the world that would love this.
Besides making sure your man doesn't stray, these cages are also designed for the kinkier purpose. Once the man is locked up in these cages, it prevents him from getting aroused.
That's not true.
I don't know how that is.
That's
and you cannot use his penis for intercourse or masturbation, nothing. He can't touch it. So he's never going to be able to pleasure himself until a woman says you can do it. And the woman has the key.
Oh, yeah.
Your partner has the key.
You can't do nothing to it.
You can't get it off.
That, yeah.
You can't get it off unless you're going to go to your local auto body repairman and ask him to weld it off.
Or if you go to like a locksmith to have to cut.
Can you imagine? Meanwhile, New York City is saying goodbye to the Playboy Club in New York. Just opened, and now it's closing. That after just 1 year in business, the owners of the new Playboy Club at the Cache Hotel in Manhattan are packing it up. Hugh Hefner's son Cooper was trying to rebrand Playboy as a millennial luxury. You had to pay between $5,000 to $100,000 to be part of this Playboy Club. Playboy Club was complete with bunny cocktail waitresses. It was like the old one.
Right.
First Playboy Club opened back in 1960. The clubs were a big tease with bunnies busting out of their skimpy stuff.
You know, at that time, it made sense.
Yeah. But now, I think Playboy has seen its day. Thanks for watching. For more Brad Show Live, like and subscribe to our YouTube channel.